Welcome to the Valley of Grace podcast, helping women reclaim their power and identity so they will know they are enough. And today I have a special guest for you, and her name is Christine James. And we are just going to go straight into talking to Christine and her giving us her life story and all of that good stuff. So Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate everyone that's listening now and on the replay. So a little bit about my life story is that I was raised in a military family. My dad joined the military after I think I was about 4 years old. So we went around multiple places, always meeting new people. But it was also growing up where babies are raising babies. I had teen parents.
Okay.
And so sometimes when that happens, it's a lot of insecurity, just growing up. I
Right.
didn't really feel valuable. And so that carried into my young adulthood where I attracted an abusive relationship and I was in there. And with that, then I started noticing that I don't like this. It's okay for me to say no. I don't want to be in this anymore. And then I
Right.
took that leap to get out of the relationship, and because I really wanted to start living, but I still didn't
Oh,
know what that
yeah.
looked like. And I still was passive about life. I really didn't have
Mm-hmm.
like big goals. I was actually afraid to have big goals because I didn't think I was worthy to have it.
Okay. You think it was
So
from the
then I
relationship or from the deep set insecurity prior to going into the relationship?
I think it was all of it. I think I attracted that individual because I already was feeling that about myself. And
Okay.
I thought that I deserved to get hit because I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't pretty enough. And what I even noticed about that, the word deserve, I actually don't like that word because it puts you on two ends of the spectrum. So sometimes when people feel like they make a mistake, they deserve these type of punishments. So they feel like they should just take on anything that comes their way. And then
Right.
you have the other end of the spectrum where people feel like they deserve everything to go perfectly because they made all the right choices. They stayed out of trouble. They said yes, you know, to certain
Yes.
things. But when you're on both ends of those spectrums, you're unable to really serve where God wants you to be. And so when I look at that word deserve, actually, if you break it up, it means of service. So I feel like the
Mm.
very things that you're going through makes you of service. And when you start to think like
Amen.
that, it'll bring you to a middle of loving yourself and loving other people.
Wow. I'm telling you, isn't that the truth? I know what you mean though with that deserve, because that's how I felt, even when I was in the toxic relationship that I was in and coming out of it. It's like, well, at the time, this is what I deserved because I didn't feel good about myself and my appearance. My self-esteem and self-worth was lacking. And like you said, it's something how we reach for that word.
Yes, ma'am. And it wasn't until I started realizing, like, oh, you know what? It's okay for me to say no. I don't want to be in this. And as I was getting out of it, this was one of the questions or one of the statements I was said to me. And this is probably a lot of women probably heard this, especially if you're in an abusive relationship. Oh, I've been doing it for this long. Now you have a problem with it? I've had a problem with it the whole time. I
Right.
just didn't have a voice. I
Right.
just didn't know I had a voice to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So I transitioned out of that. Like I said, I was still a little bit passive about life. And then I met my first mentor, this amazing woman of God. And I worked with
Mm.
like all women. They were all
Okay.
older than me. I was the
Hmm.
youngest on staff.
Okay.
And but I kind of was looking, so I think a lot of young women are in this place too. You're looking sometimes like at older women for like some type of guidance, but
Right.
sometimes they don't even know what they're doing. They're still in their pain and misery. So a lot of the things they
Mm-hmm.
give you is not healthy.
That can be
And
true, can't it? Mm-hmm.
yes, ma'am, because they're not going through the process of healing. So it's just a keeps going around and round. But when I met this woman, at the time she was Staff Sergeant Davis.
Right.
I mean, she changed my life. She was just
Wow.
consistent in who she was. She
Okay.
was fair to whoever it was.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't play favorites. And slowly I would go in and ask questions to her. And then that's actually when I was born again. I gave my life to Christ because I
Okay.
remember saying, I don't want to be a Christian, because all these women that said they were Christians were really mean and they gossip. And I'm like, I'm good. That's what. And then
Right.
I noticed the impact of that. That's why I try to be mindful of like my attitude and how I
Mm-hmm.
talk to other people, because there are
Mm-hmm.
people looking for a better way of living. And they're and
Yes.
you're God's advertisement.
Right. Right. We're his billboard, aren't
Yes, ma'am.
we? Mm-hmm.
And she changed my life. I started getting hopes and dreams and desires. I mean, big ones. And
Yeah.
I put vision board together. I got married.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 boys. We got a house. It was just a lot of things that I possible for me, and that's where I am now. And I just want to pay that forward and help other women. You know, get to stir those dreams back up and desires. Don't put those on the back
Yes.
burner, because your dream is tied to someone else's destiny.
It sure
And
is.
it's just, we all supposed to be winning. That's what I do feel. We're supposed to be winning
Yes.
and serving and helping in an amazing way.
Yes. And not competing against one another, but remember, we're all doing it for the Lord. And when we keep that in
We're all
mind, we
one
can keep
body.
going. Yeah, we can keep growing, and learning and growing, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of that. But when we get off target with that, who's the center of, who's supposed to be the center and foundation, boy, like you said, that's when the stuff started with the jealousy and all of that, because people will see,
Yes,
like you
ma'am.
said, you saw it, and then you think, well, if this was Christianity is about, I don't know if I want it, you know?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
If that's
ma'am.
all we seeing on the outside, right? So
Hmm.
why do you think it is? Well, first of all, how long did you stay in your toxic relationship is part A of the question. And then for part B, why do you think that people stay in toxic relationships so long?
So I think, so I stayed in that relationship for about 4 years.
Okay.
Because I didn't see a way out. And then I started seeing little glimpses of a way out. And it did get worse
Mm,
before it got better when I finally
yes.
left,
Right.
like the attacks and all that. And I was actually didn't want to share that with people. But then I was like, I noticed how many women are hurting and they feel
Mm-hmm.
kind of lost, because you do feel isolated when those things are happening.
Right.
So I feel like people stay in those toxic relationships because, one, they're already ashamed of like what they look like. They don't value
Mm-hmm.
their mind or their
Mm-hmm.
body.
Right.
They put others in front of them, like they deserve a better life than them.
Right.
It's like this poisonous thought system. And like
Mm-hmm.
you're just feeding that in. You think everyone else, yes, you get ahead, but then you're really not like enjoying your life. You're not.
Not at
And I
all.
think too, because you've seen such this version of mean, coming
Mm-hmm.
at you, that
Right.
you're afraid to look mean because you say no.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your responsibility. You're
No.
supposed to be doing things in kindness
Mm-hmm.
and say no.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you are in the toxic relationship, how the devil will use that relationship. And like you said, your thinking is distorted and the stuff is so twisted, and that's what happens with the abuse, like literally uh it changes your thinking pattern and your thought process. You know what I'm saying? And it
Yeah,
makes you
yes,
do,
ma'am.
yeah, this magical type of thinking. And like you have to have your own type of thinking just to really stay in that situation. You kind of create your own magical world to help to survive that, I guess I would say.
You
you
do,
know
and you shouldn't feel like you have to escape life to get away
mm-hmm.
from someone. It's like you should just decide that you don't want this. And don't get me wrong, I didn't have a child in that relationship. And I know
Okay.
there's some women that feel like they have to stay because they have a child. No. I feel like if someone if someone came to you today and said, "Hey, I'm going through this, I'm in an abusive relationship," 100% of me knows that you're going to tell them, you're going to already know the strategies and the wisdom to
Right.
tell them what to do, where to go.
Right.
but then you don't take your own advice because it seems too simple
Mm-hmm.
to take it. And I feel like sometimes we have a problem submitting to simplicity.
Right. We
We
do.
want to overthink it instead of thinking, because our
Mhm.
superpower is thinking, but our kryptonite is overthinking, right?
Right.
So if you're thinking like no human should treat another human like this, then you need to make a plan to go.
Right.
However,
Right.
you overthink and
Right. Overthink and
justify.
analyze.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Like you
Yes,
said, because we
ma'am.
start with, yeah, no human should treat another human like this. Well, maybe it can be this and maybe it can be that. No, this is just wrong all across the board. All the babies in
Exactly.
the world are still not adding up to the treatment you're getting. You know what I'm saying? We equate
Yes,
love
ma'am.
with abuse.
Yes, ma'am. And we sometimes we don't know what love is. I know I was at a place in my
Mm-hmm.
life where anything could have said I loved you, and I'd be like, okay, I could lift a rock up and be like, I love you. Oh, yay, I'm with you. That's how unhealthy I was in like
Mm-hmm.
my mindset. And I was looking for outside assurance and validation. Like, well, at least I have a
Yes.
boyfriend. I look back at that young woman. I say, girl, you are gorgeous. Do not. You are brilliant. It is okay the way you think. You're designed for
Amen.
that. But I would say this too. If someone's listening to this and you are in that abusive relationship, I look at it as a clue to your calling,
Yes.
because that relationship is designed to stifle your creativity, stifle your
Yes.
hope,
Yes.
stifle your voice,
Mm-hmm.
stifle any type of reasoning that you can help and like take your life.
Oh
It's
my
trying to
word,
snuff your
yes.
life out.
Mm-hmm.
So you have so much in you to share
Mm-hmm.
and help other people come through. And
Right.
I know you probably don't see it right now, but I promise you that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. Like you said, the key to what to your calling is going to come out of that unfortunate circumstance of that relationship. Yep, that toxic relationship. God is going to use it. He always uses all of our pain, but we don't see it at the time because we're so caught up just trying to survive. Just get, how some people say, just trying to get through the day. And when
Yes,
you're in a
ma'am.
toxic relationship, you're literally sometimes trying to get through the second or the minute. You're walking on eggshells every day. So do you
Yes,
think
ma'am.
that with Christians, would you think that the reasoning would be the same, or would you think it would be different for as to why people stay in the relationship so long?
So I think it's similar, but I do want to
Mm-hmm.
touch on something you just said, because
Sure.
I believe this 100% that God doesn't waste anything. He does
Right.
not. Well, we like to give what God does our version of what we think it is. When we think waste, we're wasteful. We have all these healthy plans all down on our menu, and we waste like
Mm-hmm.
75% of the food that's in our refrigerator.
Right.
So we know that we're wasteful. So we try to put
Mm-hmm.
God and like form it like, well, he's like me. He's not like
Right.
you.
No.
He's
Mm-mm.
not.
Mm-mm.
He has the real true mold of love
Yes.
and not wastefulness. He has that, and we need to I'm saying this to myself too, but like we
Mm-hmm.
just need to work our way to fit into the mold. And it's not to say we're not, valuable, but we are valuable. That's why we can fit into that mold, right? He is
Right.
designed for us. So I think as Christians in toxic relationship, I do think it has to do with being mean, but also again that the words, our language that we're using, they're like, well, I want to look like a nice person. The Latin word nice means to be ignorant or stupid. Don't let my kids hear the
Mm.
stupid part because they're like, oh, that's a bad word. That is a bad word in our house. We don't say that. But yeah, I think we think we're trying to be a nice or a good girl, a good
Yes.
Christian,
Yep.
and it keeps messing with your mind, and you just keep like dividing yourself, and
Yep.
like you can't even help anybody. You can't help yourself if you're constantly like saying, well, this is what this looks like. That's not your job to think what other people think about you. Our
Yep.
job is to know what God thinks of us first,
Yes.
and then is our decisions that we're making every day aligning with his. um I think another thing too for toxic relationships, I think we have an internal justice system. So when we make a mistake, we're like 10 years of life. What are you doing? God's
Right.
grace is, you don't have to do that to yourself. You can ask for
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness. And if you
Right.
have to apologize to someone, apologize to them if you're in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to carry that guilt, because then you'll believe that you deserve punishment. So I think with all that, I think that's why Christians stay in toxic relationship. And they're like, well, this is the will of God. God didn't say to be abused.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yep.
doesn't say like to stay there. It's like
Mm-hmm.
he made you.
Yep.
Um, he made you. No one
Right.
else made you, but he made you
Yes.
for a purpose. You are purpose, right?
Yes. Yes.
He made you with intent. Therefore, he
Mm-hmm.
wants you to live your life with intent. And I think we stay in those relationships, as Christians, because we think our purpose is to please others and be nice to others. And that's just not true.
Yep. And that's one thing too. Even as we heal as Christians, it's like it still shows that it's more work to be done in the thinking. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes you can't even get a person to unsee what they're saying. They have made themselves, we make ourselves responsible for the other party's actions. Like you said, it's the nice girl. You know what I'm saying? What the nice Christian woman would do, or the nice Christian man would do, if it's the other way around. But that thinking is still twisted, because you are still putting somebody else's actions, you're making that your responsibility, you're putting it on yourself. When we can have self-control and barely take care of us, we definitely don't need to be trying to control anyone else, because that's not love. God gives us that free will, and that's where the choice comes in. You know what I'm saying? He
Yes,
allows us to
ma'am.
choose. Yeah, he doesn't force us to love him. And so, like you said, when we are talking to other people, and like as we progressed onward, we're able to detect, discern it, so to speak. That detector goes off like as a red flag. It's like, yeah, they're still got that twisted thinking of somehow that other person's actions is my responsibility. So I need to do this, this, and this. And it's like, no, that's that person's junk to deal with. You can only do what's here. And then, according to what we know, that God wants us to live that way, and then keep it moved. But
Yes,
somehow
ma'am.
we get it twisted.
I think with that, as Christians, we think we have to carry other people's burdens. And I like to think of it as the airport. They say, do not touch any luggages that are not yours. So if that's not yours, leave it at the airport. TSA will come pick that up. You don't need
Right.
to keep carrying that. And then a lot of times too, and I'll say this too, especially being like a woman of color,
Mm-hmm.
and even men too. And when you're younger, all these people have all these type of questions to ask you or assume about you. And a lot of times we take it instead of pushing that responsibility back on them
Right.
to say, why would you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you make that comment? Why don't we respond that way when people say things that are ignorant? Instead, we hold it, and then we
Yep.
go home and say, Mom, they said this. And they're like, oh, I was taught like that in school. Just brush it off, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think giving kids a voice when they're younger, and
Mm-hmm.
women, like, it's not too late to start right now, but
No,
just
it's
saying, why
not
would
too
you do
late.
that? Yeah,
Right.
and just think like, why would you do that? Because that's forcing
Mm-hmm.
that responsibility on that person for them to
Right.
look inside and like, yeah, why would I do that?
Right.
Why I do that? Oh, because I seen this when I was younger. Oh, I see it's a cycle. Oh,
Right.
this is what they mean about generational.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're absolutely right. We hear stuff that other people may say, and then, instead of speaking up and like this and I'm make me feel good, I'm trying to see what your reasoning was behind coming up with what it is that you said. Like, I love you, and I just want to understand like where you get this from. And so a lot of times, like you said, we'll take it onto ourselves, but then later we're the ones that's going to have to deal with it, because soul damage has taken place. And either way it goes, it's going to be damage. But at least if we've talked about it, we've kind of discussed it, we might not even be as hurt. We're still going to be hurt, because whatever they said was probably out of line, or either it's out of line, or like some type of bias that they've gotten from somewhere else. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
But a
ma'am.
lot of times, instead of talking about it, we'll brush it off, and we go with the nice Christian woman again. well, they probably didn't mean this and this, and that, and the other. You know what I'm saying? When it really
Yes, ma'am.
hurt. Yeah, it really hurt. And what I noticed too is like with uh women of color, especially, people of color in general, but just particularly like women of color, we get so trained to try to take on someone else's burden of that when something is it's inappropriate as far as like a bias that someone has, something they say, it could come out like as a microaggression, or it could come out as a bias, or it's different ways of it coming out. But a lot of times we've like trained ourselves, and like our parents, grandparents, of course, because of slavery and all of that, coming all the way up to now, we've trained ourselves to think that, well, just let it slide because they don't know any better. And so, like I said, even though that thing is causing us pain, keeps constantly sweeping up under the rug is not helping either. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You said that perfectly. I agree with that. I think even from slavery, it's like keep your head down, just work. Keep your head down, just work, because you
Right.
don't want to look like they're rebellious, loud. I remember one time I made a correction at work because somebody was lying about cleaning a set of instruments.
Okay.
And I said, and I addressed it on a lower level, but then he was still doing the same thing. I addressed it to a higher level. And then they're like, oh, Chris, at the time I was a single parent. And they're like, oh, Chris, single parent, da, da. And I was like, nope, what's wrong is wrong. I didn't say it in a mean way. I said it from a place like I care about that person. I care about that he won't get in trouble and it'll affect other patients and things like that.
Right.
And but it got brushed under the rug because but I
Right.
addressed it, but people still had their own thoughts and perceived judgments about what I'm seeing that, and addressing.
Right.
So yes, ma'am.
Because you knew it was wrong.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
And the
yes,
same thing
totally.
too. The same thing, just giving that responsibility back on people. And that's not taking that, because we're thinking about it at night and we're like, well, and then you start not want to go do the thing in. So the women I help, they're transitioning out of their 9 to 5 because they do feel like their calling is to help other people. They may be coaching in different fields of study.
Okay.
But even if the woman is still at her 9 to 5 and she loves her job, she loves what she does, she loves helping clients and customers, but she shouldn't feel like she has to drag going to work because of those type of behaviors.
Right.
So that's a toxic environment too.
It is, like you said, putting that stuff back where it belongs and not on you. And like I said, not saying that we're not going to be hurt by it, because 9 times out of 10, we are going to be hurt by whatever they said or did. Most 9 times out of 10 is going to be something they said, and sometimes it won't be something they said. It's like the unspoken. There are certain things as a person of color that even if a person doesn't say it, their body language will help you to discern what it is they're really thinking. You see what I'm saying? As far as bias, I don't know if you've ever had those situations before where it could just be a certain look or something you're doing, some type of way they're looking at you, or at something you're doing that's kind of telling you that's the unspoken of what they're thinking about you. You know what I'm saying? So like you said, just handing it back, here you go, for you to deal with. I'm dealing with my own junk, but I need you to like take that back.
Yes, ma'am.
So what would you say your definition of a toxic relationship is?
I would say something that is slowly killing you on the inside.
Wow.
It's lethal. Like you are a vessel, right? And whatever's poisoning you is going to be carried everywhere you go, from events, being by yourself. And I feel like it's just slowly killing you on the inside. You start to lose vision of who you are. Really, it just sucks up your vision and hope, because that's designed to make you perish.
Yes.
Because what's in you is so vital and important and tied to other people. So that would be my definition. That is something that's slowly killing you. If you had dreams 10 years ago and you notice that you don't have no dreams and visions now, that means something's been happening and you just became passive about yourself. and you don't
Mhm.
think you're worthy of it.
Yeah, that is so true. And you know what was key to me when I listened to what you said, as far as it's slowly killing you on the inside, and then to the point where you don't have the dreams and visions anymore. And then it made me think about with Samson, him and Delilah in that relationship, that toxic relationship. Not only did he lose his spiritual vision, physical vision, but he lost his spiritual vision for a while, and he had to have that come to Jesus moment in that prison house. You know what I'm saying?